The best of Money Matters. The Big Story.
Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Hongbin, Jeong. Earlier today, a powerful 8.8 magnitude earthquake struck off Russia's far eastern Kamchatka Peninsula, the strongest to hit the region since 1952. Videos posted to social media showed water rushing inland. Towns were ordered to evacuate and buildings were damaged along the way. Within minutes, tsunami waves as high as 4 meters surged towards the coast, triggering emergency alerts across the Pacific. Evacuation orders rippled from Japan's Hokkaido to Hawaii and the U.S. West Coast, reviving haunting memories of the 2011 Japan disaster. But how did this happen? How does a tremor off remote eastern Russia ripple across an entire ocean? Well, joining us today to share more is Adam Switzer, who is a professor of coastal science at the Asian School of the Environment, principal investigator at the Earth Observatory of Singapore at the Nanyang Technological University. Hi, Professor Switzer. Welcome to the show.
Hi, great to be here. Thanks a lot for having me join you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, Professor, what exactly caused this powerful 8.8 magnitude earthquake off Kamchatka Peninsula?
Well, this is a particularly earthquake-prone part of the world. We've got two big ocean plates, big plates of the Earth going past each other in what we call a subduction zone. And that causes friction as they move past each other. And that friction builds up and then it releases. And in this part of the world, it tends to happen every 100 or 200 years or so, based on the historical record.
So how does it compare to other massive quakes around the Pacific Ring of Fire?
Yeah, we get a lot of earthquakes if we think about it in terms of centennial timescales, and every century or so, we get magnitude 8+ earthquakes. This part of the world in particular had a magnitude 9 earthquake, which is bigger than the one today, in 1952. Had another one back in the 1800s, mid-1800s, and another one in late 1700s. So we know that these sort of areas have these repetitions in terms of these large earthquakes.
Have there been any casualties so far? How severe is the damage to the region?
No casualties so far. That's really good news. If we look at the positives, the tsunami warning system has worked very well. The timing has been right. The wave heights are pretty close. Maximum wave height I've seen reported so far is about 1.3, 1.4 meters. Locally, they might be a little bit higher, getting up towards 2 meters, but it looks like everything has worked in terms of the tsunami warning system. And, of course, there's lessons to learn from this, but it's quite comforting to know that we are better prepared for tsunamis than we've previously been.
Right. Well, this earthquake generated tsunami waves of up to 4 meters in parts of Kamchatka and prompted alerts as far away as Japan, Hawaii, and even Chile. What made this earthquake capable of triggering widespread tsunami alerts across the Pacific?
Yeah, the tsunami heights in the local area around Kamchatka were big. They're 4 to 5 meters, but that's a pretty deserted part of the world, luckily. And the surface deformation that you get from the seafloor movement during an earthquake of this size causes the water column to move up, and that generates a wave that has a very long wavelength and moves quite quickly. It moves about the same speed as a commercial airliner moves, and around 800, 900 kilometers an hour. And it moves across the ocean. Because it's a big, long wavelength wave, it's not very big in the open ocean, but it is moving very quickly. And then as it comes to the shore, as it slows down, it grows in height. And so that's where we get these waves of more than a meter, in this case, in Hawaii and in other parts of the Pacific. And so it'll continue across the Pacific. It'll even leave the Pacific and go into other ocean basins. And, for the next day or so, the tsunami will be traveling around the ocean basins of the world.
Well, it looks like initial waves that hit Japan were smaller than initially forecast. The first wave to reach Hokkaido was only around 30 centimeters. Are there fears that later waves could become significantly larger, Professor?
Already seen that a little bit, seen tsunami waves of 50, 70 centimeters arriving in certain parts of the Japanese coast. It's very localized. And so if we look at the Hawaii example, the first waves have arrived there already, but the warnings stay in place. And it's important to understand that as the tsunami continues across the Pacific, it is a train of tsunami waves. And some of the waves will be bigger than others, and they may arrive up to hours later in places, and really depends on the local conditions. So the tsunami warnings have to stay in place for several hours, and even up to a day in places, to make sure that people are safe and kept away from the coast.
As you mentioned, the first waves triggered by a massive 8.8 earthquake off Russia's coast have reached Hawaii as well. The last time Hawaii faced a basin-wide tsunami threat was after that magnitude 9.1 earthquake off Japan back in March 11th, 2011. Now, that event sent waves 3 to 10 feet high across the islands, with the largest surges near 12 feet on Kauai and the Big Island. Could we potentially see the same situation this time round?
Yeah, this earthquake seems to be very similar to the 1952 earthquake that occurred in pretty much the same location. So because of the directionality that you have in waves, the fact that the 1952 one was very similar to this, we have a precursor that tells us where we're likely to see the highest wave impacts. Is very different to the 2011 event. The areas that will be impacted are slightly different. Obviously, the major island chains in the Pacific, including Hawaii, are going to be impacted. But the direction of the wave and the wave approach is going to be different because they were generated in a different part of the ocean. And so as they move across, different parts of the Pacific will experience waves from different directions.
And according to the U.S. Tsunami Warning Centers, waves of more than 3 meters or about 10 feet above normal levels could still hit Ecuador and Russia as well. How likely is this, and what does that level of wave height, actually mean in terms of danger to coastal communities?
Yeah, that's exactly why we use that terminology. We have very good computational models, and particularly because we'd be able to reproduce the event from 1952, we can give a decent range, but they are a range. So the waves will be 1 to 3 meters high along that coast. Some parts of the coast may have very low waves. Other parts may have local amplification that puts it up in the 3-meter range. And so that's why it's really important to heed the warnings. And if the warnings say that we can expect waves 1 to 3 meters high, we know that range is big, but it's necessary to keep people safe and to keep people away from the coast.
Right. And what should we expect in the hours or days ahead? Can we expect significant aftershocks?
Well, this is part of a swarm of earthquakes. There's been a number of reasonably large earthquakes in this part of the world over the last couple of weeks. And this is the largest one to occur so far. Unfortunately, even with all the technology we have today, we can never predict earthquakes. So there's likely to be aftershocks, sure. There's already been a couple of aftershocks. But is that the biggest one in the swarm? We hope that 8.8 is the biggest one in the swarm. But we can never really be sure because, this is happening deep in the earth. And we can make assumptions. We can assume that, this is likely to be the biggest one in the swarm, but we just can't be sure. So we have to be prepared. And, if there's a bigger earthquake, we'll go through this whole process again. And I think it's important to understand that, we can't predict earthquakes. We can say that, this place has more earthquakes historically than other locations, but we just can't predict them. So, likely to be aftershocks. Potentially there could be other large events in the next couple of days. But it's something we just cannot predict.
Even if we cannot predict, the earthquakes, are there any key indicators that will tell us whether the worst is over or if more is still to come?
We just have to react to the earthquakes that happen. So when there's an earthquake like this, we have a very detailed protocols of how we go about it, looking at the tsunami warnings and issuing the tsunami warnings and when they're issued and how we model the timing of the arrival and the potential wave heights. And then that's passed on to the local authorities, and then people should listen to the local authorities. And so, I think if we have a big aftershock and it generates another tsunami, we will just go through the same process. It's a tried and true process.
Right.
We get better at it every time we do it. There'll be lessons to learn from this one as well, in terms of the way people behave or the level of evacuation. Maybe in some places it may be too little, others it might be too much. So, of course, there's things that we can learn from every event. But the real thing is that, every time there's an earthquake like this, we go through this process and the process works. I'm really happy with the way that the tsunami warning system has behaved today, that the warnings were issued at the right time. Everything was timely. They were put up when they needed to be put up. They were pulled down when they needed to be pulled down. They were modified as soon as new information came in. It shows that we're getting better at this every time. But of course, there's other things we can do better as well.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Professor, for your time and your insights today.
No problem. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. That was Adam Switzer, who's a professor of coastal science at the Asian School of the Environment and principal investigator at the Earth Observatory of Singapore at NTU. This has been The Big Story with me, Hongbin Jeong.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.